St. Paul is giving a model for Christian behaviour, and it has lost none of its relevance. One phrase has caused a lot of ink to run among commentators. It's what seems to be an apparent condemnation of, here it's translated as silly and suggestive talk. The Greek is a neutral word. It can go either way, as a virtue, eutrapelia, or as a vice, excessive lightness. Now, as it happens, St. Thomas Aquinas has an article on that very word to see if it is a virtue or a vice. And he concludes with this: Homo est animal risibilis. Animals, that is, differ from men insofar as only the human species can laugh. It's a trait that we have. Man is a being with a gift of a sense of humour. And so he says that to go through life without that God-given gift is to be similar to the others who haven't got it, therefore closer to the animals, and therefore to be bestial, to not be completely human and civilized. So there is, therefore, the sanctification of the sense of humour, which actually the Lord himself consecrates. If you look carefully at some of the things he says, he has it and uses it, actually quite sharply. Remember when he's talking to the Pharisees, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. Do you think they were amused? And on he goes. What is but to think of the publican and the Pharisee? One talks like this to himself. Thank you, I'm not like other men, or like this publican. And on he goes. I'm sure he was a very good teacher, and he used all the stops. So we can do the same, not going overboard. And that's the delicate part. Not able to be serious. The froth in a pub on a Saturday night is not that. It's base quite often and even vulgar. The wit that one might find in an English abbey, for instance, at a mealtime when they speak sometimes on feast days, is like Oxford dialogue and very acute. It's not the same, if you like, level. It's carefully chiselled wit, which is a gift. One has but to think of Oscar Wilde. But I don't want to dwell on that. I want to go to this other one. By the way, the saints had both. I think, for instance, of the likes of Willie Doyle. I hope one day he'll be beatified and canonized, a charity martyr in the trenches. But he had a terrible sense of humour as well. He was very austere with himself, extremely austere, but he had this trait which never left him even in the trenches. One time when they were in formation there in the Jesuit house, when he was a young man, the brethren were downstairs talking, and he appeared about the 5th floor up, dressed in his hat and gown, and greeted them from the top, and they greeted him back. Next thing came down, apparently this man in cap and gown screaming, and one of the novices happened to be a priest already before entering, gave absolution to this falling body. It was Willie Doyle who had put a bolster and a hat in a habit and let it drop from the 5th floor. And I remember actually in Wales one time, and you know the ministers in Wales way back, they were teetotalers. Well, one day, while everyone was sleeping in the Presbyterian College in Aberystwyth, one of the students, a great preacher to be, got hold of a paint can and 2 soles of a feet, and they had this row of perfectly matching footsteps in paint from the principal's office down the stairs, over the street to the local pub, and then the same coming back, all zigzag, back to the principal's office the following morning. Who done it? And now he's a great preacher. This was the wit of the saints, and it's a great lubricant in life. but we need the other two, because life actually, as Thomas Merton points out in his writings, is actually quite serious. Why? There's a risk of not making it. And that's why this gospel, in this heart of Lent, is a sober reminder that we're up against an enemy power that wishes us harm. Did you notice that the demon in question has a name? Beelzebul, Lord Baal-zebul of the flies. And in an exorcism about a century ago, this devil was there. It was in the States, Iowa. And this Father Theodore was a powerful exorcist trying to get out what was in this person. It was happening in a convent. And eventually he teased out who was in there. The exorcist does do that. He tries to name the demon, gives power over him. What's his name? Beelzebul! Oh, it wasn't Lucifer. So we asked to ask him, what are you doing in there? Why are you not there by actually Lucifer himself being in your midst? And he calmly, as the demon would, indicated that he was there by order of Lucifer. And this dialogue carried on. Does that mean that you are in obedience to each other? And the devil was indicating that it's perfect obedience. And it's all perfectly orchestrated against us, like a huge, well-functioning army. So that's the power that we have against us. With regard to the facility with which they have access to souls, a century down the line, we need to be aware that they are not less but more around us and in us than before, because they are finding very little resistance. I picked up this book of the now deceased Gabriel Amort, the great exorcist in Rome, and he goes into the causes for these demons coming into souls, following the teaching that he's learned from the one he inherited from Father Candido. And this is strangely modern. A grave and hardened state of sin. Now, apparently, a soul that after a while is in unconfessed and unhandled mortal sin is its own worst enemy, because the conscience is no longer functioning and it is consenting to everything without the slightest resistance. Now, look at the planet. That is by now not at all exceptional. People are just bathed in mortal sin and not reacting against it at all. And the proof is that they are quite happy to sit before or open a screen which is full of pornography and the worst of the fumes of hell, and they don't react at all. So there's something deeply asleep and not functioning in their conscience. The Greek for conscience is synderesis. That means the watchtower kind of thing, what keeps watch. It's not doing its job. Sacrilege makes it even worse, because then they don't even take seriously their maker. And sacrilege is massively around. Very few come to confession right now compared with those who go to communion, I mean out there in general. And then there are different risks that are entertained freely by those who associate themselves with either evil places or evil people. Therefore, people who are all the time exposed to other souls who are far away from God are completely at risk of, as it were, being exposed to radiation of demons coming at them and finding that they're not sufficiently awake. All that we do has an effect on other people and vice versa. And to go to an occasion of sin is already in causa, not without responsibility and fault. It's useless blaming that bit when already we're responsible upstream with that bit. So consequences will follow. Beginnings check and consequences follow. Work upstream, occasions of sin. And that can be just as simple as the goggle box, passive looking at the goggle box, because it's not really filtered anymore. And then directly, people who are involved with the satanic. Now, there are different levels of the satanic. right now, New Age is a soft form of it, but the higher one goes into that, like initiation into Reiki or Reiki, the more one is exposed to the other side, because people are not aware that their energy is healing, but the demon can heal. Heat and so on can come from the wrong source, and he can get his own by advertising himself as a good species. But these people who are initiated into this, whatever it is, have their chakras, so-called, open. That is, that all the pores of their being are opened to these other forces. There's no resistance, and they are trying to be precisely channels of healing energy, but energy, where is it coming from? To other people. So they are not aware that they've opened themselves completely to the dark side. And you look at what happens. Things start going wrong. Not straight away, but there's a pattern always. And you can trace it up to exposure to this other stuff. He's got a hold, he's got a foothold, he's got in. Be careful, old Nick is clever, and he's got us sleeping. He goes on and warns us that the likes of Halloween is not indifferent either. But I'm not going to go to there now, it's not the season, but just be aware it's all part of the same. Because children have to be now conditioned into thinking that the ugly is beautiful and the evil is okay. My friends, I've got news for you. Old Nick wants the children. Beware, parents, what they look at and read. I want to go to the other side. This is now close to the vernal equinox, and 21st of March, tomorrow, we start to go towards the spring season, and one thinks in this part of the world of these points of the sun. You know, New Grange, Nauf and Douf, they're points of the sun, and one goes back, therefore, in time and pre-time to those who went before us into the timelessness of the beyond, with the means that they have, hoping for the best. But we have the maximum, and Lent is a time to adjust time, coming apart and letting the Lord minister to us. Remember, O man, that thou art dust. But I want to go into this from the positive point of view. I take you back to when I was a student, first time round in Rome. I was very, very moved one time. A contingent of us went from the Norbertine College down to the Vatican for a beatification ceremony. I think there were 5 being beatified all in one go. And I understood, almost in a mystic way, how thin the frontier is between heaven and earth, and how these parts of our humanity who have made it to the maximum are close to us, and how they show us the way. Because the Catholic Church has means of creating an atmosphere of suggestive glory and angelic majesty and beauty, with music and ceremony, and one gets the impression this is something of what they've got up there. And I remember thinking to myself, what got them there? What was the trick? Because after all, they had exactly what we have. Time, the body, the soul, the mind, the instruments that we have in the Catholic Church, and they had that extra bit which meant that they had lift-off. What holds us back? And I sat down in my room and I thought, it's one thing. It's the fact that the will has, without the slightest pulling back, what we call compromise, said yes. And until that happens, it can't happen, because we're still at the control panels having a bit of this for myself, e.g. bad language, e.g. bad humour, e.g. talking in church, e.g. not getting my act together with the use of time, and on one can go. We're still in command. So I thought to myself, I've only got one life. All I've got to do is say, Lord, it's all yours, and I hold nothing at all back. When I was a child, my brother was a fan of Cliff Richard, and on one of the Shadows records, the reverse side was, we say, yeah.